Right now, though, I'm absolutely thrilled to say that I'm joined by Steve N. Allen, who's a comedian and a broadcaster, as we go through the top stories of the day. Steve, a Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you as well. Nice to be here.
Nice to you. My son Jake says hello, by the way.
Hello.
You know him, you work with him at the other place.
Oh, I see. Oh,
yeah,
hello,
yeah.
Jake.
Hosken. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, it's a fairly common surname. I didn't immediately guess.
Get it. Well, there you go. Steve, good to have you on board. What about these IDs for babies? I mean, they're saying that it won't be compelled, which is, I always think, yet. I always put that at the end of a sentence. But this does fly in the face of what Labour was saying these ID cards were all about in the first place.
Yeah, I think we can go even further back. So, no mention of this at all pre-election. This is not in a manifesto. This was never floated around. And then it gets thrown out there as an idea. And the idea was all about, I tell you what we'll do to stop these boat migrants getting work. We'll bring in this digital ID that they won't need, because if you work in the black economy, you don't need to have papers. But for the rest of us, all of a sudden, we'd need to have a digital ID to work. And then babies get involved. I mean, babies don't need to work, do they? None of this seems to make sense. They've immediately gone to another place in this story. No one talked about this at all. The thing that it's meant, unless somehow there is a boat migrant who manages to cross the channel and appear in a maternity ward, if you can make it look like you're a baby, you're David Copperfield. Well done, you've done well there. It's not right, and I'll tell you why it's not right, because look at where we are in the story. This is at a time when they've thrown the idea out there and all the polls say people don't like it. So what you should do if you're the Labour government is try and work on selling the story, selling on why it could be good for adults. Instead, when everyone's saying we don't like the sounds, we didn't like it in the 90s when Blair was doing it and no one's liking it now, and they're going, okay, well, let's do it to kids then. What, are you trying to be less popular as a government? The idea of picking on babies and make them do it. And they say it's not compelled. No, it won't be compelled. But they'll make it so difficult to not have one that you'll end up getting one. Nothing's ever compelled. It's just so difficult to say no.
It has always been really interesting to me that a kind of socialist governments are the ones that are pushing for this, for this kind of overreach, this kind of overwatch, if you like, of populations. Because, like you said, Tony Blair's been pushing for this, even on the sidelines, for a very long time. And I think there are family involved in some of the companies that might be involved in supplying these digital IDs, but it still seems to be such a Labour thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I don't know why they don't think it like a couple of steps further down the line. Because even if you are Labour dyed in the wool, right, you're a massive Labour fan, you think Labour governments are going to do all the good things. Let's give more power to the state. But what happens when you lose the next election or the one after that? At some point, you must be aware that the political pendulum swings. So if you give the state too much power, if you're a massive Labour fan, do you trust, let's pick reform as the opposite end of the scale, if you will. That's one way of looking at it. Would you trust reform with the power you're about to give yourself? This is why I don't think anyone should trust governments with this level of control. Not because you love Labour or you hate Labour. It's about the idea of what will some bad operator in the future do? Because at some point there'll be one in there, so you make sure that the state can't control lives that much. And that's why it always feels very short-sighted of Labour governments to think, oh, this will be great. No, just think about it if it were different characters in this play. You wouldn't trust it then, so why let it be a thing now?
Do you think that something this big should be put to a referendum? To the British public? Because like you said, it wasn't in the manifesto. It's come from absolutely nowhere. We know that the argument about stopping migrants, illegal migrants working is bogus, because you and I, if we go for a job, we have to provide proof that we're British. I've had to provide my passport to every employer for goodness knows how many years. So we know that that's a bogus, that's not going to change anything.
Yeah, I suppose it's because your first name. That's why they check your nationality, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's why they double check.
That's not my fault. That's my dad's fault.
That's a good point. Well made, yeah. No, you're right. I mean, the argument about it being about migration, yes, it should be put to a referendum. They won't, because they can see what the polls say.
Yeah.
You could do it and it would just be an exercise in being told no. At the very least, I would accept, I don't know what you'd call it, kind of a referendum light, where you just make it a main topic of the next election. And then we as the people would get to vote on that issue, and we'd have to mix it in with our thoughts on other issues. But we shouldn't have no say in this at all. It needs to be floated up there, at least for the nation to have a say on it in one way or another. I just don't think they will, because they know which way the answer would go.
Yeah. Let's have a look now at this quite extraordinary story about the Islamist killer. He shot dead 2 men over what appeared to be a drugs deal gone wrong, and has subsequently been in prison, and of course then took a hostage that was a prison guard, threatened to kill that prison guard, and was then denied being in general population, I believe they call it, for fear that he would start to try and radicalise people and behave in that way. He's just won an extraordinary amount of money from the British taxpayer. It's about 230 odd £1,000 in legal fees, and then 7.5 grand for hurt feelings.
Yeah, and the argument here is that his freedom was somewhat restricted in prison. Isn't that a definition? I mean, I've not Googled it, but isn't that one of the things of being sent to prison?
I kind of thought it was, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was.
And the risk was, you know, not wanting this terrorist to hang out with other terrorists, so you separate them. I mean, wow, I used to get separated from other people in math lessons because I didn't behave. I didn't then go to the ECHR and sue about feelings. And here's what I worry about. If you extrapolate this as a core argument, right? Being in prison made me feel bad, impacted my mental health, I would like some money, please, is an argument that anyone could make, vexatiously, I would say, but anyone who goes to prison could say, oh, it's impacted my mental health. Therefore, what, they could all sue?
Yeah.
So we're just going to end up giving money to everyone who ends up in prison, which is ridiculous, and yet somehow feels like if it did happen, I wouldn't feel like it was that much of a shock. So it's the slight other issue here is the amounts of money. 7 grand in compo, but the rest of it was legal fees. So I feel like there's another debate that should happen about how lawyers are making so much money from this. It feels like there's a racket going on there somewhere.
Well, lawyers
paid that.
do put flyers in the libraries at in prisons. They're allowed to do that, and they punt for customers, because there's no way, Steve, that this man decided on his own he was going to sue. He didn't sit there and go, well, this is unfair. Somebody went to him and said, do you know what? We reckon we can get you some cash out of this, and moreover, we can make more cash out of it ourselves. So let's do it. No win, no fee.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a big win mathematically for the lawyers in comparison. Look, I'm not in favour of the 7 grand compensation, but it is such a big payday that we've paid for, taxpayers are paying for. It's hardly like we're rolling in it, do you know what I mean? And so that money goes to some lawyers who've managed to reel in an absolute treat there, haven't they? As you say, they've gone fishing for it and they've found it's a deal. But we shouldn't... David Lammy didn't even appeal this. We need to do something about it. We can't have a situation where people who are rightly sent to prison then say, oh, but it made me feel bad, it impacted my mental health, so where's my money? It's ridiculous. Firstly, we wouldn't be able to afford it if everyone does this. We can't have a situation.
And like you said, Steve, that's kind of the point. You know, if you're going to murder 2 people in cold blood and then complain about your not being able to hang out with known terrorists, it just is bizarre to me that that's even a thing.
Yeah, in fact, I'd say one of the reasons I'm not a big old criminal is because I wouldn't like the consequences. That's the purpose of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That I know I wouldn't like prison, so I don't do stuff that could get me sent to prison. That's how it works.
Otherwise, I would.
Yeah.
Definitely. But the interesting thing, again, with this, Steve, is just looking at it. Clearly, this case wasn't heard using legal aid. This is different. So just looking at it, I mean, I've done lots of court stuff in my time as a reporter. If it was legal aid, there wouldn't be this now compensation claim being met. So it can't have passed the bar to get legal aid. That's what I'm thinking. It's not actually being talked about. But you know what I mean, though? Because if you have to have a certain criteria to get legal aid to fight your case, and then we pay for that anyway. This isn't that. This is another form of money.
Another reason why it shouldn't have been brought as a case, and yet somehow won. The newspapers make the argument that it's all about the ECHR. It's not as if they've got a shining track record of doing things that look legally sound. You know what I mean? We all quote the you couldn't deport someone because the son didn't like chicken nuggets or whatever the story was.
Yeah.
The Telegraph went through that period of every single couple of days. They drop a story of a ridiculous reason that someone shouldn't get deported. And that's what we're up against. It's the same sort of ballpark, isn't it? Like you can take a case that any jury, not that juries are going to be a thing in the future, but any jury would look at and say, well, no, this is ridiculous. And yet somehow goes through a different legal path, and then they win, they get the money.
Yeah, that's exactly a really good point there on juries as well, Steve, because they are trying to take those away. Again, I think that's big enough for a referendum. They are trying to take those away from us, and had this gone in front of a jury, which it clearly didn't, nobody would have gone with it. Nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like all of the stories that we hear of people who did plead not guilty to getting in trouble over their tweets. The jury looked at it and go like, you're kidding, off you go, 17 minutes later. But all of those were less than 3 years as a potential sentence, so all of those would not have a jury. So I don't know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist normally, but this one's starting to make the hairs on my arm stand up.
Yeah, me too. I don't like anything. It's an 800-year-old right being taken away from us. No. Steve.